that going. Did you hear that? That's the first time I've ever gotten that. Maybe
that's funny. It gave me an option of like continue or leave meeting.
Well, I guess my job is taken care of then, at least for that first kind of part. So, all right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and do a little intro sort of thing. And hello and welcome to episode 4, I believe, of Is This Thing On? We are here today with Emmet of Bud Tapes, and they do some amazing work. It's kind of like a label. How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's just a cassette label.
Gotcha. Sure. Yeah. And they got a lot of stuff coming out, specifically this year. I mean, I've tracked some stuff through last year, but y'all have been pretty active, putting out things left and right. And we're definitely going to get into the meat of that. But can you just kind of like describe the whole like operation, the people involved? Like, are you doing most of it?
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty much just me. I pretty much don't deal with a lot of the BS that like a lot of record labels deal with like, doing like blog. I mean, I do a little bit of that, but like I mostly just make the physical media for people and then try and like cheerlead as much as possible. So yeah, I like make all the cassettes like by hand. Obviously I don't like source the plastic and the magnetic tape and whatever, but
gotcha.
I hand stamp all of them and I dub them all at home with a duplicator that I have. And then, just like cheerlead as much as possible. It feels great to just like rep your friends' bands and stuff. And, it's like, oh, if you liked this tape of a friend of yours, like you would also definitely like this other tape, who's my other friend or whatever. Just trying to make those kind of connections and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you have kind of cultivated this cool kind of like tribe or community of musicians around you. Like I was just reading through the description on a bunch of them. Many are Portland based, but there are some that aren't and are very interesting, which we will get into. But yeah, and I guess kind of getting into that a little bit, I was really wondering, like, what do you look for in an artist, or what does, I guess, an artist look to you for, more or less? Basically, what kind of unifies what the sound or the idea of Bud Tapes? Like, what is that idea to you besides what you just mentioned?
I feel like I'm pretty like anti the genre tag, which I think kind of comes across in the way that I put out music. Like, I don't really like the whole like way that people talk about music where it's like, if you like Pink Floyd or whatever, you would like Frank Zappa, because like, like when you talk to your dad or your grandpa or whatever, they're going to say that. But when you get down to the meat of like the music itself, it doesn't really, like, those two things don't necessarily are compatible like at all.
Absolutely.
So I feel like genre is kind of meaningless in a sense. And so I feel like the way that Bud kind of unifies itself is it's mostly people who are just doing and making music just for the sake of the doing. I feel like most of the bands that I know are just either friends of mine or people that I've met through the internet who are just, fighting the good fight, making music in their bedroom just because they like to do it and because they like to share it with a couple of their friends or whatever. I'm not trying to like sign the next band that's going to, after Bud Tapes, sign to like Universal or whatever, and I'm not really trying to deal with like a band where I'm going to have to like talk to their manager or their booking agent or PR. It's just like people that are just doing it for the sake of doing and just, having fun while doing it.
Absolutely. Sure. I think that puts it very, very well, because like, as I was saying before, I was looking through the description on a lot of these records, and, there's things that say like unmixed, unmastered, or something like that, yet they still sound like super good. That should not like throw anybody off. But yeah, it's this like very DIY kind of like raw thing between each of the records. Obviously there's like maybe not highly produced, but like more polished. It's hard using
Yeah,
terms
totally.
like that when you mean like
Yeah.
music that has been mixed
Yeah,
and mastered.
polished for sure is a good term. Like a lot of the stuff that we've put out has like, our friends have gone into a studio or like worked with a friend who is pretty like well versed in production and stuff like that. But I think like that kind of stuff also seems to kind of fall to the wayside in terms of importance, because you can listen to an album that someone spent like $2 million to make and it can like totally suck.
Yeah.
Or you can listen to an album that like someone just made on their computer or like a boombox in their room, and it can like totally blow your mind and be like your favorite album ever. So I feel like I'm looking for more of like those kinds of people who are just finding ways to make records amid all of the chaos of life that we live now.
Absolutely. And like this is a word that comes up in pretty much like all of my interviews, but it's this idea of like immediacy of like getting an idea out, or like
Totally.
Sometimes I feel like immediacy might not be the right word, but there's just like above all else this drive to just like get the idea out.
Right, totally.
Obviously make sure it's good and all that, but like, yeah, I think that's something that Bud Tapes definitely like fosters, is just like this community of people that, are hell bent to get their ideas out there.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. I like that. I like that description for sure.
I'm glad.
Hell bent on
hell bent on getting it out.
Cool.
But yeah, no. So I was curious too, like, while the main thing, I mean, it's Bud Tapes, it's in the name. The main thing is cassette,
Right.
and all that. Y'all have put out a couple records, at least that I've noticed, there, or are going to. There's the upcoming world record winner, which is your project, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my band or whatever, but I usually play all the instruments.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then the other one was the Jack Habigers. I always like, it's Habiger, or I don't know. I get mixed up really fast.
I think is what it is. But yeah, it's whatever. I'm sure Jack wouldn't really care however you pronounce it.
But yeah, no. And I was wondering, like, kind of like, how do you go about doing that from such like an independent perspective? Because I feel like getting like records out, even 45 or whatever, is just so mystifying to many people.
Right.
Specifically me too.
Right. And this is something that I have to usually explain to people. So the records that we've done, and the one that we did for Jack and that I'm doing for my record, are something called a lathe cut record, which is a hand cut single thing. So the difference between that and a normal record is, when you press a normal vinyl record, in order to do it, you have to make these really expensive giant metal plates to press the plastic or whatever. I don't know what records are made of. I always call it like wax kind. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to get those really expensive things and have them made to press a certain number of records. And so in order to offset that cost, you usually need to make a certain number of records. Like most record plants will have a minimum of like 300 or 500 records that you need to make. And with something like Bud, it's usually like, there's not going to be 300 or 500 people that are going to buy the thing. But with a lathe cut record, there is a lot of companies now that will just they have these old machines from the 40s and 50s that they've refurbished. And also they make new ones too, but those ones are pretty expensive. But they'll just take a piece of plastic and just, use this machine that looks like a record player to cut each record individually. So it ends up being more expensive to make each record. It's usually around like $5 to $7 a record, compared to when you do the 300 or 500 at a normal press. It's going to be more like $2 or $3 a record. So it's more expensive, but then I can just make like 15 records or whatever.
Yeah, just like prepare for the stock that you're expecting to sell.
Right. Yeah. But there is on the horizon, I shouldn't like necessarily talk about it in specifics, but there will be a real Bud vinyl release in the coming months. Nothing is announced yet, and nothing is set in stone. But sometime in the next year, there will be a real Bud vinyl release that we're going to get pressed at this local pressing plant called Cascade that's in Oregon.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, it's like I've kind of saved up enough funds from the label in order to kind of, put a down payment on a real vinyl pressing. So that's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. That's something like I've dreamt of doing.
Yeah, totally. And it's for a friend that has put out a record on vinyl before, but the last time that happened, it was just a total nightmare. So I'm hoping that this time I'll be able to help it go a lot smoother for them than their last label was able to.
For sure. Yeah. And I was kind of wondering too, or before I move on to the next thing, let me like catch my thought. And I just thought that was a really cool perspective on that, just because like, as I was saying, like a lot of people like love these mediums, but like don't really know the work that goes into it or the different things that can be done. And what you're talking about reminds me of like, what was the band Dead Moon or something that had like Elvis's like old lathe cut thing or whatever. I don't know specifically, but
they're Portland legends, and they kind of like popularized the lathe cut record in the era after, because it was popular when people were originally recording, like before tape machines were accessible. Most people were just recording directly onto a record, on a lathe cut record in like the 40s and 50s. But Dead Moon were like the first people to like see a lathe cutter in a thrift shop in like the late 70s and 80s and be like, I think we could just make our own records with this, which is pretty tight. I love that. But the one thing I will say, and I forgot to mention about lathe cuts, is they sound terrible. Like usually they're in mono, so not a stereo signal like normal records. And it's going to be really crackly, very quiet signal. So it is a bit of like a novelty item, like you're going to put it on your table and it's not going to sound as good as you listening to it on your, streaming or even a cassette. But it is just a cool, like physical thing to hold in your hand, and to like have a slightly larger album art and stuff like that. So
absolutely. Like there was a record I just bought recently that's like some old, like I think probably from like the 50s or something. It was like in essentially the dollar bin, but it's like this weird electronic music compilation. And like putting it on the other day, I was like, this sounds terrible, but just like there is something to be said for just like, obviously the big art, like having that just huge and displayed wherever you want it to, or just like being able to pull it out is something great. And also just like knowing that you're like supporting people that are literally doing this by hand, like essentially on their own or with
for sure.
Yeah. So, and I think that plays perfectly into what y'all do. So kind of going a little bit into like, I guess the history of Bud. I noticed that your first release was in 2017. So can you talk about like how Bud started? Was it because you needed a name to put something under that? Like, I don't know. Like, how did it start?
Sure. So it started in 2017. I had that first world record winner album that I had finished. I had a band before that, but this new band was me deciding that I wanted to like play guitar. And I had played guitar. I had played guitar since I was like 12, but I've never been very good at it. But this was my first time kind of feeling like I could kind of write songs on a guitar and be happy with them. So a lot of my friends at the time were starting to sign to other labels and stuff, not like big signings, but just like local stuff and putting out some records on some sweet labels and stuff. And I was just like enamored at the fact of doing that. And so like I had heard some of my friends had just like randomly sent their records to like record labels and that had just worked out. So I did that whole thing. I like sent it around to like, I don't know, like 20 labels. And I got like ghosted or rejected by all of them. But there was one rejection email that I got from, I can't remember the name, but the person who runs Off Tempo Records out of Seattle. They have a band called Slash Tires and stuff too, but they put out like stuff from Lake and a couple other bands that I was really into in Seattle when I was growing up there. And they responded pretty much being like, this label is fake and it's just a thing for me to like put out my friends' music and stuff. My recommendation is always just, like start your own label. You can just, all you need is some way to make tapes or something, or just put it on the internet and say that you're a label and people will start to believe you. And I was like, oh, like that sounds like a pretty cool idea. And so I had this pin that I had made at my friend's show. My friend's partner used to bring this pin maker to shows. And I, for some reason, was stoned and I just like wrote like Bud with a smiley face, that kind of logo on a pin. And I wore that everywhere for, I don't know why. But that just kind of seemed like to fit the idea of a cassette label, some sort of kind of meaningless, funny word that kind of rolls off the tongue. I don't know. So yeah, then I just decided that I would make Bud Tapes a thing, and I put out that one tape on it. And I didn't sell like any copies. I had to like give away all of the tapes pretty much. I mean, I think I sold a couple of them at like gigs and stuff. But most of them I just gave to friends. And then I put out another friend's tape after that. And it was always a hope that I would like maybe actually like have a real label and like be putting out other people's stuff. But yes, I put out a friend's tape and nobody bought it. And then I put out another world record winner EP, and I was like, oh, I'll make a tape once someone buys one, and nobody bought one. So
oh no.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. But so then there was a long lull after that. I was just kind of like, oh, this isn't working out. I moved back to Seattle for a little bit and then moved back to Portland and was getting really busy with just like playing in bands and dealing with other stuff. Bands and working full time for the first time stuff. But then right before pandemic, before we knew that this was going to happen, I was at a show with my friend Addie. Her band is called Flip Chuck, and they were just looking to put out their first EP. And I was like, I mentioned like, oh, I kind of have like this fake label that's like not a real thing, but like I can totally make you like 12 physical tapes, and like I'll give you a couple of them and I'll sell the rest to make my money back or whatever. And my friend Addie was just like stoked at the idea of that. And I was like, oh my God, tight. So we did that. It ended up coming out in April of 2020. So after the pandemic had happened and stuff. But after that, people just started sending me stuff. I did a couple of like live stream shows because people were feeling like pretty bummed about not playing shows. So I like hosted them on the newly made Bud Instagram and stuff. And then it just turned out me being like, every time someone would play one of those, I'd be like, if you ever have music, just like send it to me. And then that just kind of waterfalled into having a bunch of releases in 1 year. I think we put out like 20. We're now about to hit like our 23rd Bud release, I want to say.
I think I have the Bandcamp pulled up right now. So I think Best Days, the one before you announced the new world record winner album. I thought it said somewhere. I think you're at 22. I'm
a pretty bad historian. Like I kind of keep it in my mind of what number we're on, but at the same time, I'm always having to go back and look at my own band.
Yeah, it's like how I number the episodes of the show. Like they are somewhat connected, but not in any like real like. The numbers don't fucking matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just a matter of like, if someone's trying to, for some reason, get every Bud release, maybe that will help them figure out if there's one in between that they're missing.
And then it's box set time.
Yeah.
Everything included. But yeah, so I kind of also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, world record winner a little bit. You kind of like talked about it a little bit, and
yeah.
I do really want to talk about like some of the artists that are on Bud Tapes, but this is just fresh in my mind since we're talking about it. So you just put out a new single, which today. Today. I woke up really early today for some reason, like way earlier than I usually do. And I usually wake up at like 6 when I'm, working prep at the shitty sandwich shop. Right. But anyways, I like woke up and was like, oh God, I gotta like, prepare more for this interview. This is the only time I have today. And I was like, oh my God, they just posted something. So, but this one is Off the Record, Pockets of Nature, and it's the title track that you put out.
Yeah.
So, really cool. I quite enjoyed it. It has exactly those like recorded to 4-track vibes that just like I find so comfy. Yes. This is what
I've since oh, tight. Oh, that's so sick. That was the first that's the exact same 4-track that I first got when I was like 17. I found one of those on Craigslist for $10 that some guy was selling. It was like before everyone was kind of like this newly found obsession with. It's so ridiculous nowadays, but
I literally saw that happen, and we can get into that later.
Right? Anyways, but yeah, that totally changed the game for me. I never really learned how to record on a computer until recently. And so that's what taught me how to multi-track record. When I first got it, I would just only sing into it. I would just do these like weird a cappella multi-track things. And that like totally blew my mind at the time of just doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, now I've since moved on to, I just have the 4-track set up because I've been recording a friend of mine. We just finished mixing something, that's why out. But now I have this 8-track.
Whoa. I've only seen those things in like pictures on the internet.
Right.
They're kind of fabled.
Yeah, they're very finicky. I bought it a year or two ago, and it was broken. I got it for like $50, and then I gave it to this repair guy, Jack Saturn, in Portland, and he tried to fix it for like 6 months, and then gave up on it, and then had this eureka moment like 2 months ago, and emailed me being like, "It's done. Come pick it up. Give me $200." I was like,
all right, nice.
Yeah, it's cool. Working great. It's totally nuts having 8 tracks to record on. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, World Record Winner is my band. I recorded on 4-track mostly. I usually record all the instruments myself. Pockets of Nature is about like me finding, I always like thought of myself in that really someone who like really liked the natural world, but then when I think about it, I like never really go hiking and I never really go camping. Like I don't have any camping gear or anything, but it was just about like kind of feeling connected to these small little moments in nature that I was able to find myself in, like even in the city and mostly being stuck at home. But it was just like my little bits in my backyard. Like I live right by this biking trail that will take me along to a couple of like really nice nature preserve zones. So it was just like finding solace in all that kind of stuff among all of the like chaos that was going on in the world. But yeah, that's what Pockets of Nature is mostly about.
I think I really sympathize with that, honestly, or maybe sympathize isn't the right word. My brain is just whenever like I can prepare however much I want for an interview, but there's always like 1 or 2 moments where my brain is just like trying to catch up. Yeah, anyways, totally. I definitely feel like very connected to that idea of like I don't really go outside that much. I mean, like I try to, but I'm not like, a nature person per se. Yeah, totally. But I definitely like have these very like almost spiritual moments when and it happens every once in a while. And I just like, that was definitely something that I picked up on. Like even just reading the title of the song, I was like, right, I think I know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And I think I was also mainly in the title track, I'm kind of trying to get at, I don't know if it's cool anymore. I feel like it's like overdone, but I'm like a big like Phil Elverum fan, like Mount Erie and microphones and stuff. And he has this whole idea in one of my favorite albums by him, No Flashlight, which is like terribly panned. Everyone hates that record. I don't understand why.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. But he has this whole thing about like erasing the connection between, like, we like to think of like there's an indoors and an outdoors, but he kind of wants to erase that distinction, and that there are moments of like natural beauty in like the indoors in your like colloquial boring life, and then there are also like really boring and seemingly like chaotic things that go on in nature as well. So it seemed like there's no inside, there's no out. I say some people say that, but I really just mean that Phil says that.
Yeah.
And then I also kind of like am agreeing, but also kind of disagreeing with that notion, trying to posit my own idea of that, I guess.
Yeah, he has a lot of very interesting like philosophies, a lot of which I like very much agree with, like the whole autograph thing. And by the way, you are totally preaching to the choir here. I am a huge I'm a huge Phil head. I have the record I got from him when I went to see the tour for Now Only, which was crushing.
Yeah, I saw him. I saw him right after he put out the Crow one, and then right after Now Only 2. Now Only, I like curled up and I went alone after a breakup, and I just like curled up in a ball and cried. It was like a seated show, and I just like curled up in my seat next to all these strangers and was like sobbing.
I definitely like saw similar things at the show that I went to, is like just like silent kind of sniffling or something, and it's just like, exactly. I mean,
there was one woman during that show who just kept on screaming. She would just be like, "Oh God!" like over and be like, that show was pretty bonkers. But I also
sounds manic as hell.
Yeah, I saw him right before I moved to Portland when I was in high school. I think I was like a junior or a senior in high school. On right before he announced Sauna, but he was playing all the Sauna songs. And he played with a keyboard going into a mixer with like a lot of other stuff going into the mixer. It was just him. And then that went into a speaker that was just behind a giant gong. And like every now and then he would be playing some overtones that would make the gong just like, it was like,
that is so cool. I think there's a, that's kind of like something I've heard about a lot of like electronic musicians doing, just to like get these even crazier, more acoustic sounds out of like synthesizers and stuff like that. Like I think some of the krautrock people did that. I can't remember where I heard about people doing that.
Yeah, I feel like I can't remember the names of all those krautrock people, but there were definitely some German bands in the 70s that did some similar, just like fucked up industrial type shit like that with gongs.
Absolutely. Just the sound of metal and that specific type of metal is just so good.
Well, I could geek about Phil shit forever, but
we could turn this like hour interview, or I guess we've only been on but I usually do an hour. We could turn this into like a 3-hour talk just about Phil.
I could just go through all of my Phil records. I have, speaking of No Flashlight, I have that. His first pressing of No Flashlight that he put out comes in this like fucking like 4 foot by 7 foot poster.
Yes, that's right. I've seen that online. It's crazy.
I used to just, in my dorm room when I bought it in college, I would lay it out and it would cover my entire floor space in my dorm. Like there would be no other room. And I would just like kind of lay around and like crawl around and read all the little things and stuff. He was just super in depth of like what was inspiring each song, like the poetry that he was reading and the stuff that he was listening to. And like, bonkers stuff. That was a big game changer for me.
Yeah, he did a very similar thing with the Mount Erie record too. There's that whole like Headwaters thing.
Yes.
And I've always been obsessed with that idea. Like I've literally made playlists since I like found out about that whole thing, like, but inspiration playlists I would call Headwaters.
Right. Totally.
Just like love that idea about like him bearing, all of the inspirations, like pretty, you go and listen to the record and like read the inspiration and it's like note for note, you can totally see how that went into it.
Yeah. But then at the same time, you can also kind of see how you can enjoy it without necessarily understanding the context of it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what you said about like the packaging that he does with I have the Mount Erie record and that huge, sprawling layout he has with like the story and
Yeah, and it's like him
the
climbing
art.
the mountain and then coming down the other side of the mountain. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like I didn't want to assume that you were a Phil head. I keep saying Phil head. I just think it sounds
That
funny.
works. That's probably what I would say.
Is there a name for Mount Erie microphones fans? I don't know.
There
But
probably is. You just have to like search on Reddit or whatever.
yeah, something like that. but I can definitely see. Oh, I just realized that I'm clipping a little bit.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay. Anyways, so I can definitely see now that you've mentioned it, like how Phil might inspire not just like, world record winner, but also just like Bud Tapes in general, because there is this whole idea of like the importance of like the package of a certain sort of music.
Right.
Knowing that it was handmade, like somebody, this wasn't just like cut in a factory, like this is somebody from a community that was using community resources to kind of like prop up the community, which I think is really cool. So it's interesting to hear that inspiration from that. I was curious, so like to kind of talk about like both some recent releases and just like more about the operation of Bud Tapes, like how do you I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this, but like how do artists usually like reach out to you, in the cases that they are from the community in Portland, or in the case that they're from, some crazy other place or something like that. I was trying to think of an example off the top of my head. But,
there are a couple of options of like how people find it. I mean, the one that like started it all and that I still continue to do is just like hounding my friends all the time, just being like, did you finish that record that you're working on? I want to hear it. Like, obviously I want you to send it to other labels and you like get some sort of big break, but at the same time, I really want to put it out.
Absolutely.
That's my usual go-to, is just like hounding my friends. And then the other way is just, I don't even know how people find me on the internet, but certain people will just send me stuff on the internet, and sometimes it's really cool. Pretty much all the time it's pretty cool. Like I sometimes have to turn people down just because I don't have enough time or resources, or I feel like I just don't know really how to like, not like sell it. I hate using that word, but like trying to like promote it and stuff. Yeah. Because I just don't even know where to come from. There's some people that send me music and I'm like, I've never heard anything like this. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing, in terms of like, how do you know what to do with it? But yeah, like a good example is like my friend of a weird situation is my now friend who I've actually never met in real life, whose name is Daniela. She has a project called Sur Carlita. She lives in Tijuana, Mexico. And she followed my Bandcamp fan profile and then a bunch of other of my social media.
Huh.
And that just made me kind of like notice, and that she had linked to this new record that she had made in her Bandcamp, like a link to her Bandcamp page and like a bunch of her social media of this new record, Hollowies, that she had put out. And I listened to it and it was just like the craziest thing I had ever heard. Like, it's like, she's so like intelligent and like creative, but like the way in which she plays music is like nobody I've ever heard before. It's kind of like, I hope Danielle wouldn't be offended by me explaining it this way, but it's like if an alien like listened to a bunch of like lo-fi bedroom folk and pop and stuff, and then without like knowing how to play instruments, just decided they were going to make an album.
Yep.
It's like so nuts sounding. It's like so cool. Like, obviously she can play guitar and stuff, but she does like, the way that she does all of her synths on the record is she just sings into her computer and then converts that to MIDI files and then like just layers a bunch of them with different MIDI instruments. It's like,
that is brilliant.
It's so bonkers. Yeah. And she's so young too. She's only like 19 now, I think, and she has never played a show before.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that was just like a random connection where I listened to that, and then I just immediately I was sitting with my partner on the couch, and I just like listened to it on my phone for like a second. And I said to my partner who I was sitting next to, just like, oh my God, should I message this random girl from Mexico? And she was like, yes, 10 out of 10.
Yes,
I just like
definitely.
immediately messaged her, and she was like super down. We talked, like we did a little FaceTime and talked about it. And she was really stoked on the idea of just doing a run of tapes. And we just did it. We didn't necessarily sell a lot of them, but I feel like I've gotten a lot. Some of my like coolest like criticism in a positive way has been people listening to Sir Carlita. They're always just like blown away by it. And then a similar thing with that band Amigos Imaginarios. They just randomly sent me a demo.
I was going to ask about them. I was very curious about that because the description that you wrote for it like really piqued my interest.
Yeah. So I'm forgetting one of their names is Arbol, and then I'm forgetting the other guy's name. I think it's Caleb, I want to say. Sorry, just looking him up on Instagram. I know his Instagram handle. Yeah, Caleb. Caleb is the name. Cool.
Gotcha.
Caleb lives in Worcester, Massachusetts, or Worcester, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce it. But he lives in like a converted firehouse that is now like a DIY space and like massive community living situation.
That's crazy.
So makes all sorts of crazy music, usually on 4-track and stuff. But I don't even know how he knows Arbol. Arbol's originally from Colombia, but she lives in Paris, France now. And they just sent, I don't know if they've met in real life. They might have just met on the internet somehow. I don't really know. But they just like sent files and stuff back and forth over the internet, over email, and made this just bonkers sounding record. It's like psychedelic bedroom folk type stuff.
I really can't find a way to describe it.
It's really, I really just only think of it as like psychedelia, because I feel like psychedelia is a genre, but in itself, like doesn't really necessarily connote any sort of like sound or like way in which you write a song. It can just be kind of whatever. So definitely pretty psychedelic in that sense.
Absolutely. I really just wanted to touch on them, and that other record you were mentioning passed by me for whatever reason. What was the name of that one again?
It's the record's called Halloween. It's by Sur Carlita. Halloween is apparently, Daniela says, is what Spanish speaking kids on the internet say as like a cute way of saying hello. It's like the Spanish way of like henlo. You know what I'm talking about?
That's so cute. I love that.
It's pretty tight. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so I mean that covers like there's a bunch of just like I'm sorry. Once again, it's one of those brain farts where I have so many like thoughts that I'm trying to catch
at the same time. Worries.
But and there's a lot of familiar names. I noticed like the people that just put out the Yippee tape, like have put out some stuff. The record under the name Eminem, which I thought was hilarious.
That's the same person. That's Aaron from Yippee.
That's right.
That's their like Eminem is their like no holds barred. Just like they were just trying to put out music without thinking about it and stuff. And I have also never met Aaron in real life, but I've like known people that have gone to Yippee shows in the past and have opened for Aaron and played shows with them. But I think they posted their Eminem Bandcamp on Instagram, and I listened to it, and then they responded to something that I was posting about Bud, and I said, oh my God, I really love that new Eminem thing that you put out. Like, I'd love to make tapes for you sometime if you want to. And they were just like, oh yeah, like just make a tape of the one that you like or whatever. And we can sell it. And I was like, tight. Yeah, that's great.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And then, this new Yippee like B-sides collection or whatever it is totally bonkers. It's like it's mostly, like B-sides and demos and stuff on the A side. Some of it is available on the Bandcamp, but a lot of the songs are just on the tape. And then the B side is totally tape only, and it's just a mixtape of baseball themed songs that Aaron likes.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I remember like I was reading through the description of it in a kind of a haze this morning again, and just like that sounds like a really fun package.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
great
and it's strange because like I've only done interviews with like artists so far. Even before I did this show, when I was doing interviews for the radio station I was working at, I never talked to anybody that like about a label or I don't know how loose the term label can actually be like used. The way that I think about it, and it's something that you touched on earlier, it's just like this little like pocket community or something like that. Like I feel like every great, like truly great label is that. They're like capturing a specific community at a certain time. And I'm like thinking of like PC music. I kind of think of, obviously this is a much larger example, not much larger, but larger example would be Portland's owned Kill Rock Stars, which actually they're not Portland's owned. They started in Olympia, right?
They started in Olympia, but they're in Portland now.
Yeah, that's right. But like stuff like that comes to mind for me. And it's like, I think in preparing for this interview, I was like really unsure of like how to tackle it because there's so many artists to talk about.
It's flattering that you say that we're kind of like Kill Rock Stars or whatever, because I really like look up to at least like their ethos. They were like big into just being like, they hated just all popular like alt rock and shit that was going on at the time, and they were just like, we want to put out stuff that we like and that we think is cool and that everyone thinks sucks. So like kill all your rock stars and just listen to all these bands that like don't know what they're doing and stuff. I thought that was always really cool.
It's just so fucking cool. And like now some of those records are like by the most cherished artists. Like probably my favorite band of all time, Unwound, is Kill Rock Stars artist. I mean, totally. Gabe and I were in a band literally that was just like the joke among us was that we were like an Unwound cover band, essentially.
Oh, tight. Damn, I didn't even know that Gabe really liked Unwound. Gabe, I mean, we haven't even touched on Gabe too, because like that's our only like connection of Gabe recommended me for the interview, right?
Yes, he did.
Gabe was the bassist in my high school band.
That's crazy. You were playing guitar in that, right?
What?
Were you playing guitar in that? Or I think I saw an old video of you when Gabe and I worked together.
Yeah, we were called the Mushies.
That's right.
And we would like play songs about like dinosaurs and like I don't even know what else. It's pretty cringy looking back on it now. Maybe it was kind of like twee, I guess. But like, you know, Gabe was really into like slap bass and grunge at the time. He showed me Fugazi for the first time when I was like 17. And that just like, I had no idea that like anything could, like I hadn't even heard hardcore before. And then he showed me fucking Fugazi. And that just like, just destroyed me.
That sets you on the perfect path. Like
he tried to get us
at that age.
He tried to get us to cover Waiting Room. I was like, I don't think I can do this gig. But I remember thinking like, holy shit, this is crazy sounding.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, so Gabe, we just like kept in touch over the years. Like we have barely hung out. Pretty much every time a band of mine like goes on tour and plays in Bellingham, I hit him up and usually he'll like come to a show. Or the last time I played in Bellingham, or maybe it was the last time or the time before. The last time I played there as a world record winner. And we set up a show at the alternative library when they were still in the karate church. And Gabe did his Ends ambient project. He had like, I hadn't heard any of it before. He just like told me like, oh, I have this ambient thing that I've been kind of working on. And it just like totally blew my mind when he did it. Because I've been really into a lot of like cranky ambient stuff. And that's definitely kind of like the realm in which he's coming from with his Ends project. And so since then I had always just been like, yo, I have this fake label. I'd love to put out a tape of your stuff. And then that's another situation where I just kept hounding him over and over. And he finally put a little collection together. And I really love that Ends tape that he put out. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. It's
Spiral.
called Spiral, right?
Yeah.
I really love that record.
It's funny, I didn't initially like write any notes about like asking about Gabe, but now that I'm thinking about like part of me was thinking, well, I did already interview him, but the other part of me is like, well, there's a really cool relationship here that should be explored. But it's funny. So you were at that Ends show?
I played it. Yeah, it was.
You played it?
Yeah,
Oh my God, you did. I was there.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was my partner and I, and she did like an overhead projector.
Yep. Yeah, I remember it now.
That was world record winner.
I didn't even put two and two together until just now. I remembered because I went for Gabe, of course, like really good friends and all that. But also there was this person opening something egg. I forget.
Oh, Glass Egg, my friend Amelia.
Yeah, Amelia. She actually tried out for the band that Gabe and I were in for a little while.
Oh, cool.
And it just didn't really work out. And honestly, like our band fizzled out like not long after that.
Right. Yeah. That's just sometimes how it goes with that kind of stuff.
No, exactly. And it's so, yeah, I actually have seen World Record Winner live. And if I remember correctly, it was a very fun show.
Yeah, I really liked that. That's kind of like me. That's me and my partners, my romantic partners, like touring setup that we do. We want to do that again at some point. We just did like a little like 4-day long weekend tour on that one. But it was really fun. My partner is so creative and really cool. And her name's Bailey Bast. She does all sorts of visual art and stuff. She's mainly a ceramicist, but on that she was doing a lot of like live drawings and weird cellophane stuff. It was really tight.
Yeah. It was really a trip. It was really cool. And she also did the banner art for your Bandcamp page, right?
She took the photos that are usually like around, and she does a lot of the visual stuff for Bud. Like she's done like a lot of her art is all over the place too, but this is going to be the back cover of Pockets of Nature.
That's so cool.
Her sweet little drawing that she did. But she did like the Bud logo. That's with the window with you're like looking out at a house and some other stuff. And then on the Bud page now, the like profile picture is that little embroidery that she also made.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it seems like a really cool, like, once again, it's just that like very homely feeling of the label and the whole operation. It just feels very, it's just going to be redundant, homely. But you kind of mentioned like eventually, you know, maybe going back to touring or whatever. But what are kind of your plans outside of what you've already mentioned for Bud Tapes in the future?
Yeah, I just hope to just keep doing what I'm doing, keeping it fun and exciting. I hope to not like ever get into the slog where I have to like pay a PR person or something. Trying to keep it all pretty close to my chest, but also, yeah, just being able to like put out whatever I want for the future. And then, also have more, resources and able to like do stuff like putting out vinyl records and stuff. That's a big hope for the future. I mean, I know that I'm like 95% sure I'm doing one, and hopefully that will lead to others. Hopefully that just doesn't bankrupt the label and it ends there. But that's also always an option.
Yeah. I've certainly heard some crazy label stories. I was just listening to What Had Happened was the podcast Open Mike Eagle does. He's doing a season with LP right now, and they talked about kind of how Def Jux folded and all that. And it's just, there are some crazy stories about like how in a second a record label will just go like, yeah. So this is probably a really scary thing to talk about.
No, it's cool because even if I lose all my money or like, sign a bad contract or whatever and lose my rights to the name, like I'm always going to be continuing to do stuff. I have like dreams of starting like a kind of separate like CD label for more experimental stuff too. But I don't really know that many people that make that experimental music other than like Gabe and all of the weird loopy stuff that I make myself. Well, it's not loopy. I don't even have a loop pedal. I use tape loops and stuff, but yeah, one of these days. But yeah, I'm always going to continue to just keep doing what I'm doing no matter what anyone says, pretty much is my idea behind it. And hopefully I don't get burnt out on it. I haven't, and I did like more releases than most labels that I like last year. So that seems like promising.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the amount of growth
to do it forever.
Yeah, the amount of growth I've seen in like the past year. I think I started following y'all when Gabe dropped his EP, but when I posted that I like got the cassette or whatever, a friend of mine, friend of a friend really,
right.
Like replied to my story and was like, yo, how do you know about Bud Tapes? I was like, my friend just released an EP on them. I didn't know about them until today. He's like, yeah, they rock, man.
Oh, damn, that's tight. I love hearing that kind of shit. It's wild that like, it still blows my mind that anyone that I don't know personally has found it. It's just like last week I got some submission from someone in Brazil, and the music was like pretty out there and not necessarily my vibe. And I couldn't understand what they're saying, but the song titles seemed like a little bit cringy. Like they seemed like almost like QAnon tinge. Oh. So I was kind of like, I'll probably have to pass on this, but yeah. I couldn't. It was something about like lizard people or something, and that just has a certain connotation nowadays, at least when you live in America.
Like if it wasn't for like the community behind that whole thing, it would be such I guess it would be a funny yet horrible thing to put out. It's like totally. You could never do it, but you have to appreciate it from afar, kind of.
And also just I don't even know how this person found my music. It's just like, I guess like Bandcamp is a masterful thing where it's always recommending stuff for you to listen to, and I guess I put out enough random stuff that someone's going to stumble on, I guess one of them at some point, and maybe then that leads to them looking at everything else too. But who knows?
That's the thing. The algorithm loves quantity.
Right. Yeah, totally. Just the amount of stuff that I'm putting out, I guess, just ends up having people looking at it. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I mean, when people keep seeing like new things from the same place, like each week, they're like, okay, like this is clearly like worth my time if they're putting like this much effort into it.
Right. Totally.
At least that's the way that I kind of have experienced it. Totally. But yeah, I don't think you'll have to worry about hiring any PR people just yet.
Yeah, totally. The algorithm will do it for me. One of these days I'd like to get like an intern or something to help me with some stuff like mail order. I'd like to maybe not do that anymore, have someone else do that for me. But right when I started like actually doing the label, like in May of 2020 or so, I had like a couple of teenagers reach out being like, hey, I'd love to get involved and like intern. And I was like, what? I don't even know what you would do. My partner was like, you should just like make them get us coffee and stuff. Or whatever.
But that's kind of what it is sometimes. Like so many times, like especially me coming out of college, like this past year and just like working at a sandwich shop, I'm like literally like grasping for anything. Like I'm probably just a slightly older version of those teenage kids, honestly. Sometimes like there's a local tape shop or something that like every day I'm like, I just got to go over there, talk to them, see if they would take like an apprentice or whatever. But
right.
Yeah, no, I think that would be really cool too.
One day, I mean, it'd be sweet if I was like a real enough. I've also like starting to look into the actual like financially getting stable and becoming like a sole proprietor business and all that kind of shit or whatever. But then that would also mean that yes, like I'd be able to take like a college student and they would get like college credit for like hanging out with me or whatever.
That would be really cool.
That would be pretty. I would love to do that for some kids, so they just get to like hang out with me and learn about how running a label is just total whatever you want it to be, and then they get to use that to graduate college with or whatever. They don't have to take a class. They just get to hang out and listen to me rant about Phil Elverum or whatever.
Absolutely. And I think doing an internship with an operation like yours, that's very like hands-on, you know, it's not this massive kind of label situation. Cause I have heard like, you know, friends of friends that like went to school in LA, got an internship at some big label or promoter or whatever. And it's just like, I'm hearing about their experience of it. And it's just like, seems totally disconnected from what the bare bones aspect of it really is, if you want to do it yourself.
Yeah. And I think the whole thing is like, I feel like I did this one weird interview a while ago. It was my first like request to do an interview, but it now still hasn't come out, I guess. But I did it and they were asking me all these weird questions about like, like what do I look for in an artist when I'm signing them? Or like, well, we like don't really sign anything ever or whatever. And like it was all this stuff and it was strange thinking about like they try to be like, what makes Bud Tapes special? Like what is special about what you're doing? And I'm like, nothing. Like anyone can do what I'm doing. Like if I do anything in this world, it's going to make some other kid start their own cassette label wherever and put out their friends' stuff. Like anyone can do what I'm doing. It doesn't like, you know, you can just do it. You don't have to even have friends. Now with the internet, you can just post something on the internet. And even if nobody listens to it, it's there for the next forever or whatever, you know?
And it's under that umbrella, like, you know, that people can come back to. Right. And I think that is a really important point to make because like labels are a thing to me that have been demystified in the past couple of years as I've like read books and watched interviews or whatever and doing this interview, of course.
Yeah.
But like the main thread I've heard from a lot of them is like, we didn't know fuck all about finances going into this. We had a few bands that we thought were cool and that we thought other people should hear. Yeah. And so we did it.
And that's all you have to. Yeah. That was the huge thing for me is, and nowadays, like I have a lot of like labels that I look up to, like this label called Dear Life Records that I really love. And this other label called Lily Tapes and Discs that I also really love. And like, just now starting to be able to talk to these people. And like we've traded tapes and stuff from like, I've sent them some Bud stuff and they've sent me some. Well, that's mainly Michael from Dear Life I've done that with. But like just talking to both of them, they're both like, oh yeah, we have no idea what we're doing. Like we're just like making it up as we go along. And that was just like so refreshing being like, these people I really look up to and are like big figures, or I feel like are big figures in the world of helping people put out music are also just like, I don't fucking know. Like, do whatever you want. You know?
Just make it your own. That's the most important thing.
Figure out a way to do it and just do it. It doesn't matter how. You can just do whatever you want.
That should be the message behind that. If y'all made it this far, and if you take one thing away from this video, if you're thinking about doing it, this is your sign.
Buy a dual tape deck like this one. Or a duplicator on the internet. It can be mono. People hate mono duplicators, but they still work. Most people are just listening on boomboxes anyway. And just buy some tapes on the internet and make a thing for your friend or for your band or for whatever, you know, just do it. It doesn't matter. You can just do it even if nobody's going to listen to it. Send the tapes to random people that you don't know. You know, just do whatever you want.
This is fantastic advice, and it's inspiring me.
Right. Yeah. You should start your own label too.
I've thought about it.
And that cat in the background too. You need to start your own label.
Oh, his name is Pacino.
Pacino, nice.
Yes, great half name. After the actor, half after a cappuccino is because the lady that sold him to me said that she was her little cappuccino baby.
Oh,
and I was like, why are you giving him to me then? But I'm happy I have him now.
Yeah.
But anyways, oh, thank you so much. He really is. He's kind of a forever kitty, and I love that about him. But yeah, to kind of close out, I mean, is there anything you want to promote besides what you've already said? Anything that?
World Record Winner album comes out July 9th. That's my thing. There's a lathe cut that's going to have 2 of the songs on it, and then that comes with a full tape of the full album as well. But you can also just buy a tape of the full thing. Also, like, shout out my friend Skylar. They run a label called Orange that does CDs. They put out my like full world record winner discography from the last 4 years this year. And they're also putting out an Arthur Russell covers comp that's coming out tomorrow. Me and my friend Daniela have a collab song that's coming out on that. And then there's like a million other really sweet artists that are going to be on that.
That's so really cool.
Orange. It's spelled like the fall album Orange. So Oranj. Gotcha. Check out Orange. And trying to think if there's anyone I'm forgetting to shout out. I think that's pretty much, that's my only like friend that I know in real life who has a label. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I'm actually really excited to see that CDs are kind of making a DIY not even comeback, but like they've kind of been discarded recently. And I mean, they're so cheap.
These are the new tapes. Like, it's like they're everywhere and they're $1 and everything. They reissued literally everything on CD.
Yep.
So
everything.
If it came out, it's going to be on a CD probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
hopefully we don't give away too many secrets to people. We don't.
Sorry. Like, no, don't buy CDs. They sound terrible and like they're really expensive and whatever. You know?
All right. Well, that makes a pretty good send off for me, I think.
Great.
So, well, thank you so much for coming on. That was really fun. Hopefully it wasn't too hazy. It's been a long day.
No, totally. I've had a long day too of just kind of like stressing out about sharing that song and stuff. I just like was really worried that nobody would like it. Luckily, I've gotten a lot of really positive response already. So, and hearing you talk about it too is also really, really nice. So thanks for that, for listening.
I'm glad. Thank you. Well, yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say.
Cool.
I was trying to think if I had like a legit outro, but I think this is it, and I'll just have to find a way to cut it.
Yeah.